Aaron, I just watched your video earlier today on
Yeah.
weird looking speaker.
Dude,
Is
isn't
that
that the
thing really
weirdest
called
thing?
Endow? Like that's like who,
Yeah, it's
how do you
endowed.
how do you
Well
say it?
endowed, I guess.
Endowed audio.
Well, I was actually unsure. Like when I made the video yesterday and said it out loud, I was like, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but whatever.
What you in the video you said Endow. Like you just
Yeah. I
Sounds
don't know if it's
fancy.
Endo. Like Endo doesn't sound right to me. Endo's
Endo,
two different
isn't
I
that
know
what
what
we used
endo
to
is.
Yeah, that's what we used to do on the skateboards, right?
That's
Mhm.
yeah, that's
And
a bike,
Endo,
At a
yeah.
motorcycle.
BMX, yeah, and then that's other stuff.
I don't know about the other
Recreational
stuff. I'm talking about the one wheel on the front.
But that's
Ain't that
just
Endo?
you
No,
know
no.
the song "Rolling Down the Street Smoking."
You know-
Wasn't that Endo?
Sipping on
Okay.
gin and
Sipping
juice.
on gin and juice.
I should've-
Laid back.
That's right.
On my
known you
mind,
were
on my
there.
money,
See, you
and my
know it.
money on my mind.
Endo
Yeah.
smoke.
Come on.
Maybe I'm just totally wrong.
So yeah. Weird
Yeah,
looking
weird
speaker.
Very weird.
I don't know about that
Very,
name, but okay.
Very weird sound. I don't know. So you other guys, I don't think y'all saw it, but just imagine a speaker that is fully omnidirectional until about 6 kilohertz, and then all of a sudden it's only like plus or minus 20 degrees in the front, like in the tweeter range. I mean, like all of a sudden, there's no gradual transition where like the sound stage and the radiation pattern narrows. It's fully omnidirectional, and then all of a sudden, like somebody dropped a line and said, "All right, right here, we want you to point forward only." And that's exactly what that speaker does. It is the weirdest thing.
That's
I don't
that's
understand
amazing.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah, so
understand it.
remember flashlights. I like flashlights too. And there's some like they call it like basically like you have a flood or a like a beam. And some have it so that it's a very gradual transition between like the strong beam in the middle to, you know, the wider pattern. But then there's some where it's a real strong beam in the center and then just like real like light outline. It kind of reminds me of that. So here's a question for you. So directly on axis, like if you do the on axis was rising, the treble was rising, right?
Yeah, at the very, very end. Yeah.
At the predicted in-room response had the dip and then it kind of flattened out in the treble.
Yeah.
If you had them aimed directly at your ears, but you're at your listening position, does it sound more like the predicted?
It sounds like the predicted. Yeah. I saw your question. I was going to answer, but then I knew I was going to talk to you here. So yeah, and I actually said in the video, so the estimated interim response is basically it's weighted. So it's 44% on axis, it's 44% early reflections, and then it's 12% sound power. And that prediction works out to be pretty much dead on. Almost every speaker I've measured in room versus the anechoic measurement that I get from the clipple and how it sounds. So that's exactly how it sounded, man. It was just like, I was sitting there listening, you know, and because I always listen before I measure. So I'm sitting there listening and I'm like, man, the highs are just like, they're not there. It's just really weird. And then as soon as I stood up just a little bit, like started to stand up out of my seat, it was like, okay, the highs completely went away now. Like, what the heck is going on? And then, you know, you can look at the design and kind of get an idea of it. But when you see the data, you're like, oh, wow, now I really see. Because as soon as you go like 10 degrees above or below that horn, there's nothing from that tweeter. I mean, it's just like somebody says, done. I've never seen a speaker have such a dramatic shift over such a short range. You know what I mean?
Is the
Like
data
just
on
plus or
your
minus 10
website?
degrees.
Because I was looking for it right now.
Well, it won't be Thursday because I won't be back at my house until Thursday.
Yeah.
So
okay. All right. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So do you think that it's possible, because you said the sweet spot is so small that if you point one speaker to your left ear, is it possible that it'll be far enough off axis to the right ear that you don't really hear the same sound? Is it like that narrow?
Yeah, very well. I think very much so. Yeah, and I say that because there's no sidewall reflections because it's so narrow horizontally. You know, like it's only like plus or minus 20, if that, which means that like there's nothing really going to the sidewalls at that point. So there, you won't catch like any oral. I won't say you won't catch any interoral crosstalk, but it's going to be so minimal. And I was like looking at the design and thinking about it, and I was like, you know, I can see why somebody might do that, but then to have it omnidirectional up to the tweeter, you know, like to have it playing, I guess to me, like if you're going to have a laser beam focus, just make it laser beam focus as low in frequency to as high as frequency as you can go. Don't go full omnidirectional where it's a 360 degree sound field and then all of a sudden it's just laser beam. Like that's so weird to me. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. I guess I'm trying to make sense of why the predicted in-room response makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering if because of how narrow it is, like maybe it's just because it's only going into one ear, right? The treble response is only going into one ear and not so much on the other.
Right. Well, so the reason that response is like it is, if you think back to just like kind of what I was saying, it takes the early reflections into account. It's like 44% early reflection. So on the sidewalls and on the floor and ceiling, there's practically no reflection. So you're basically saying, all right, 1 times nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like if 1 is the on axis, you say 1 times nothing, well, you got nothing. So that's kind of what you're doing. I mean, it's 44% of 1 and then 44% of nothing.
Yeah.
So you basically wind up with nothing in the tweeter. And seriously, exactly what you see in that graph, I would say if you show me that graph without me listening to it, that's what I would have expected to hear going into it. That's what I heard listening to it before I even saw the data.
I guess what I find what was interesting, though, is I thought that it would have maybe sounded a little bit better in your theater room that is more treated, because the way, like in my mind, it kind of works out like if you're in an anechoic chamber, then the sidewall reflections wouldn't matter, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like whatever is happening with that is gonna it's not making as much difference, But you said your living room is less treated, but it sounded better.
So I think the reason for that is because even though there is minimal horizontal dispersion in my home theater, the little bit that there is absorbed because it's high frequency. It's over 6 kilohertz, right? But in my living, did I say that backwards? In my home theater, there's low absorption, right? So it's capturing all that sidewall reflection, even as minimal as it already is. But in my living room, when you go downstairs, there's no sidewall absorption. So the little bit of sidewall reflection that is sent out into the room is not captured. So the highs are boosted a little bit, like that little trough that you see in the estimated in-room response, that dip is not as severe in my living room because it's not absorbing already the minimal amount of sidewall reflection.
Got it.
So I hope that makes sense.
Did you hear any of that stuff? Like sometimes with those very narrow speakers, I've noticed things where you kind of get effects like bouncing off the back wall, and you're like, "Whoa, what's that?" Because you're not expecting it. It's not happening on the side. It's like just passing you, hitting the back walls or something like that. So
I didn't notice that, and I think that's probably just more due to the fact that everything, like from the low bass to the upper mid range, like the highest mid range, is fully omnidirectional. I mean, it's sent to every surface in that room.
Yeah.
I'm really perplexed by that. And like I said in the review, some people may say, well, why don't you contact the manufacturer and ask them about this stuff before you do the review? Well, I like my reviews to be completely standalone most of the time. And then if I want to, I can follow up later with, hey, the manufacturer said this or that. But if I get into the manufacturer speak, then to me, it feels like I'm just marketing at that point. And I'm not doing a real review. So, and everybody's different. Some people may or may disagree with that. But that's how I like to conduct my reviews. So if they get back to me about it with explanation for that, then I'll just pin a comment there and I'll drop it in my actual written review as well.
Yeah, I hear that. I respect that. I don't know that I do it exactly like that. I mean,
that's fine. Everybody's got their own. I don't care if anybody doesn't do it my way, the way I do it. That's fine. That's how, because I've done it that way for so long, like that. I'm just like, I'd rather it be standalone, and then we'll come back and talk about it later.
Like I guess like in this most recent review that I did for this Bluetooth speaker from Monoprice, I asked Hobie, like, I saw another speaker on their website that looked almost exactly the same, but it had more features, more power. You were able to do like true wireless pairing, like stereo pairing. And I'm like, why didn't you do that with this one? And he was just like, well, we had to sacrifice a ton of battery life. So to me, that was like insider knowledge. So I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. I guess, I don't know if it's a decision I would have made, but.
Right. Like personally speaking with me, what you're talking about, I feel like that's different than what I'm talking about, because I'm talking like the acoustic properties and the design thought that went into it, Plus my reviews, dude, if I spent like 5 minutes talking about that, nobody would watch it. People had the mindset or the memory span of like a gnat. It's like, your video is more than 10 minutes. I'm not watching that.
I mean, that's totally me. 10 minutes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I get it. I guess you know why? For me, I already know.
Just kidding.
I already know that I don't care what their intention is. Like I've had manufacturers like make a super bright speaker and they're like, well, the intentions. I'm like, all right, well, I don't agree. Well, I don't think that's correct. So I don't care what you think what your intention is. I don't
That's
think
true.
that's how
Yeah,
it
that's
should be.
actually that's something I feel the same way. And I guess I wasn't even thinking about it when we were talking about it, but that's another reason. Like, like the people that will go do extra things for their reviews and talk about extra stuff, and like, well, the manufacturer says this, this, and
Yeah.
this, and let me repeat everything they've said. Well, I'm like, you can go to their website and read that. And at the end of the day, for me, it doesn't matter what they say; it matters what it does and how it sounds. So, anyway.
I get that.
It's definitely a weird speaker, man. Like, I would never own it because it's not my cup of tea, just like I said in the review. But it's cool. Michael, you got the same. I think you were asked if you wanted to review it. But when I saw it, I was like, that's too weird not to review. So, yes, send it to me.
Yeah, it was definitely, it's an interesting speaker. Just the way that they've designed all the drivers in it. They kind of fire out. It's like, it's definitely odd. So.
Yeah, when you first look at it, you think it's what it's called an MEH, so a multiple entry horn. You and I have talked about this, like a Danley horn.
Yeah, Danley does that, but they do it on the inside, and this company does it on the outside.
Yeah, that
exactly.
Thing looks so weird.
Yeah,
like at first you're looking at it, you're like, oh, that's a multi-entry horn, and then it's like, oh wait, hold on, the mid ranges are all pointing on the outside. What the heck is that? And then you're like, well, the whole that's weird.
It reminds me of the bazooka tube back in the day in car audio.
The car audio, yeah, dude.
Like a bazooka tube right on top.
Subwoofer,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
That takes me back.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a neat speaker. I'm glad to have had the opportunity to measure it, and now I'll send it on its merry little way.
Now, if you can't catch the show, we do have an audio version at anchor.fm/daily HiFi. So make sure to go on over there if you like to listen to the show.